Welcome everyone to the Work Blueprint. I am so excited today to have Santosh with me from Denso. Santosh, welcome.
Hey, Siobhan, how are you?
I'm great. So, folks, a little bit about Santosh. So, my guest today has spent nearly 25 years helping the world's largest industrial companies transform how they lead, how they grow, and develop talent. Santosh joined Denso in 2021 to strengthen the company's collaborative culture and reimagine the future of work across North America. Today, as Senior Vice President, he oversees human resources, legal, corporate communications, all while shaping the people, culture, and leadership strategies behind one of the world's leading mobility companies. And I think one of the things that fascinates me, so Denso as a company is one of the world's largest Japanese automotive technology companies. So folks, if you have driven a car, there is a really good chance that Denso has built something inside that car. They are a Japanese company. They've got over 160,000 employees globally. Santosh, thank you so much for giving us your time today.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you, Siobhan, for inviting me and an opportunity to share with you, where the world is shaping towards the work blueprint. So thank you. I'm excited to
My
join this.
pleasure. So, folks, the thing that's really awesome about Santosh's career is it's very different. So, Santosh, the thing that when we met that I was really into was your background. So, why don't you tell folks a little bit about your background and how sort of the whole thing has come around with your career and how did you end up in HR?
Thank you for asking that. I've always been curious about work since I graduated. I'm an engineer by trade, and I have had this mindset that you have to be at work, at the place of work, to understand how work gets done. In my early career, I was a design engineer. I developed products for mining, construction equipment, and I had to be on the production floor for 6 to 7 months, building a machine from nuts and bolts to an
Wow.
entire machine, and that was part of our development program. That instilled this behavior that it's important to ensure that you bring your knowledge to work, but you also rely on people's experience on the production floor to get things done. And from there, I moved across multiple functions, including Six Sigma, process excellence. I had a startup in India for a global engineering design center. And then you're coming to your question on HR. I was transforming a business, and somebody tapped me on my shoulder and said, we would like someone who has delivered business outcomes to lead HR. And I said yes, as I've done throughout my career. And that led me to human resources. And that gave me a different perspective about how work gets done is not just by technology or tasks, but
Yeah.
how it gets done is by with people and how we enable people through this transformation. So, an engineer transformed to HR professional, and I think I owe it to the experiences that I've had over across continents, Asia, and then currently in the US.
Do you know the thing that I think is really important about your background is like systems thinking?
Mhm.
So, right now, when you think about the role of HR, we're kind of in this position where there's this new kind of expertise that's forming, which is around reinventing of work itself. And really, work is programmable now. When you think about work itself down to the task, it's programmable, it's systems thinking. And that's kind of where I've really enjoyed sort of working with you is the way that your brain thinks is very systems first, and
Mhm.
then you get to it. So I think that's kind of where you are a little bit of a rare breed in the sense that you have both, those expertise sets at the same time, which is great.
Yeah, I owe it to the experiences that I've had, and I'm happy that it comes naturally because of the experiences that we have had and how we can think about the work first and outcomes first, and then how we enable it to people.
Yeah. And I think one of the things you and I are both kind of seeing across sort of our peer group, the CHROs that are, leading sort of the most complex transformations is that everyone is right at the front of they're kind of like everyone has like a clear destination where they're wanting to go, which
Mhm.
is like AI driven without leaving people behind. The one thing that has been really impressive about your sort of leadership style in this is the culture that your company is also bringing to this moment.
Mhm.
It's not just about AI first. So why don't you like talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's been really like connected to the values that we have as a company about being really bold, but also being really responsible. Tell us a little bit about that, because I think that's going to be something that I think politically is starting to shift in the industry right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that comes as an advantage for any organization whose culture is grounded on valuing human skills
Hmm.
and realizing human potential. And that's what Denso stands for in terms of ensuring that every associate is a part of the change curve and change journey and is deeply engaged in those opportunities. So that's what has made us 75 years strong and still going. And we invest in our human capital. We invest in our people, and for any large change, we don't go tool first. We go, what's the purpose? What are we trying to solve? And therefore, I think it's an advantage that we have as an organization where change was not difficult in terms of why we're doing this. Reinvention of work and work architecture. It was more important to understand that humans are always going to be at the center of Denso.
Yeah, and I think it's really true because a lot of the conversations I have with customers right now is where everyone's talking about this like agentic first, no human in the loop. And I'm like, the most complex organizations in the world are not going to like vibe code a car. They're not going to vibe code a bank. They're not going to vibe code medicine. So the reality will be that there will always be human in the loop for the most complex organizations in the world, right? Especially when it comes to safety and regulation, and you fall into that category of like that as well. So human in the loop is not only like the right thing to do, but also like the chances of like us going to fully AI is just, I don't think it's real. I think it's a
Yeah.
little bit like made up.
Yeah, let me take a leaf out of manufacturing as an example, right? In organizations which are lean manufacturing focused, generally what you've seen is there is a principle called Genchi Genbutsu. What it
Hmm.
literally translates to is on-site verification, meaning you go to the floor and you use all your senses to discern what's going on, which is innately human
Hmm.
because it's not about verifying if the KPIs are being met. It's understanding, sensing, and feeling if there are any abnormalities in the line.
That's really interesting.
Yes, and I think that's at the core of
Hmm.
understanding how human in the loop cannot be eliminated. In fact, has to be strengthened in the age of AI because I was reflecting on, like you mentioned, about the future of automotives and self-driven cars. There comes a point where if self-driven cars, what do humans do in a fully self-driven car? How do they use their time during that moment? So while it's comfort, convenience, safety, humans are known to apply judgment, and a few humans probably feel tentative about riding a self-driven car. And I think where does that come from? It comes from the core of the human nature to
Hmm.
discern things, to make decisions based on what they observe and what they sense. So I think we should lose sight of that, and human in the loop is always going to be relevant.
That's really interesting. How did you, what was the word that you described that thing as, that when you feel it, what's that called?
Actually, Gemba means place of work. Genchi Genbutsu means going to the place of work. Go
Okay.
see, go see, feel, sense, and act.
Okay, that's really interesting. I might steal that because I have a thing I talk to my team. I can just feel the creaks of the floorboard in my
Yes.
company. I don't know how to describe it. I just know it. I can feel
Yeah.
certain things that don't feel right. And then
Yeah.
I kind of lean in a little bit and I find things aren't going well.
Exactly. And I think the key aspect is many people have tried to replicate that
Yeah.
principle without teaching how to do it.
Yeah.
Meaning, you need to teach people that how you go and look at abnormalities, not from a what's the outcome. You
Hmm.
should sense it based on what you're observing and what does your judgment tell you. And then that skill is kind of innately human. And I believe the future generations have to be probably educated on those aspects
Yeah.
more than, and of course, the fundamentals of physics. are necessary so that we don't lose our next generation to automation and AI without understanding the concept of why we do what we do.
It's one of the things. So I use like quite a lot of AI, as you can imagine. And one of the things that's going to be really interesting is that AI can be so arrogant and say something of like it's a true expert. And if you don't have expertise and challenge it, it will sound like so real that it's true that if you don't have that feeling, that taste, that judgment, you're going to be shipping stuff that isn't true because it sounds so believable. Like I've even got to the point where Claude and I are fighting a lot now because Claude says things so like clear and I'm like, no, you're wrong because I know the answer because I'm checking all the work. And it's like, it's not saying I'm wrong, but it's like, well, I only did it like this. So it's arguing back a little bit with me around like that. Now imagine the amount of people that are going to be using AI that don't have expertise or like that feeling, that judgment, are shipping rubbish because they
Mhm.
think that it sounds so believable. So I think
Mhm.
expertise is going to be really important for us to figure out what is real, what is not real, because AI has the incredible power of like gaslighting us so that it
Mhm.
sounds like really real. And that's where I think like the human AI component is, if we're not talking about startups, we're talking about the most complex orgs in the world who power, all of the things that we all either interact with, use, banks, cars, all of those medicines, etc. I think that's going to be really important. And I think that's the tricky part where it's like the way that you've been thinking about it is not AI for the sake of AI. It's like, where will we use AI? And then what does that mean in terms of our people and the impact and how do we amplify our people so that which is like a really great way to think about structuring the design process of where you go.
Absolutely, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Discernment is a skill. What you get as a response, it's important to discern it. And I think most complex organizations are taking a holistic view. Like we are working on looking at our work and how work gets done, and organizations that have not been successful in deployments and who've been AI first have quickly understood that bolt-on AI in antiquated processes is not the solution. It's an opportunity for all organizations to redefine how they think about work.
Hmm.
And that means the easiest part is to buy a software
Yeah.
because it's a line item in the budget. But the difficult part is building trust with employees to make sure that they understand what's the implication and how we develop them towards the future, like the skills of discernment, judgment, or upskilling them towards a stronger skills that only humans are expected to lead. And that creates a sense of trust where they are able to participate in work reinvention. So I
Hmm.
think that's the part that's most important, and we are trying to work our way through such a methodology.
Do you know what's really funny? Like, going a little bit off script here and topic, but I was at this CIO private lunch maybe 2 weeks ago, and CIOs from top organizations that we all know and we know the names of the companies, right? And I don't know how I ended up at this table, but I'm at this table. And one of the CIOs was saying that basically AI, our young people love it. They're going to be the best adopters. There was this whole like, oh, AI is going to take all our jobs and like it's going to be great and like our people love it. And I was like, I was sitting quiet, and as you know, that's pretty unusual for me to sit like when I've got like I was sitting there and I was like, hold on a second, like, are you guys all really sitting around this table saying that like our young people just because they're young are going to automatically adopt AI? So then I was like, when it came around, like we're doing this like kind of talking thing, circle thing, it was a hosted thing. I was like, are you guys like on social media? Does anyone pay attention to what's going on in the real world? Because the employees of your companies do not trust AI. They do not trust the leadership around AI. They are booing people in the graduations. Like this generation is actually, I read somewhere they're more against AI than they've seen sort of an against in a political form before, which tells you like there is this like complete distrust and not want to adopt. And I think the way that your company and the way your leadership is driving bold and responsible is meaning that your people are much more likely to actually adopt. So I think there was like this, like, I was like, hold on a second, you guys are like completely in your ivory tower right now, not listen to your people. Because I can tell you right now, your people, you're going to spend millions of dollars on technology. You're going to buy all of these AI tools and then you're going to ask for the ROI. And by the way, your people are going to have to use the AI for you to get the value because remember, your companies don't allow full agent end to end, which means getting your people wanting to adopt this new way of working is going to be the most critical thing of our, journey. And you are all thinking that they love it. Okay. This is going to be really interesting 18 months to watch like the panic in the system come down the chain, right?
Yeah, and I think to your point, it's about the vision and purpose of deployment of AI. I think when you talk about, we all have watched the graduation ceremonies and people
Mhm.
walking out.
Well,
It,
apparently we did, but they didn't.
yeah, yeah. But the point is, you know, what are they trying to signal, and who are they walking out on? They're
Yeah.
walking out on people who actually have claimed that AI can solve efficiency and
Oh,
replace humans. So that's the message for organizations to think about, that the purpose should be very clear, and it depends on the purpose of your organization and ethos of your organization, where we are augmenting our humans or making humans, enabling humans through AI,
yeah.
and enabling humans to make better decisions with use of AI, but not augmenting them, not replacing humans.
Yeah.
And I think, Shivan, you're onto something. The future of education might have to change, because you know what I've been thinking about. Of course, we need we need people who know the fundamentals, and we do need a deep science experience if you are discerning something. But about judgment and human skills are
Hmm.
going to be absolutely critical. I was reading a report, I think it was by Gartner, that the human span of attention has reduced to the span of attention of a goldfish, with
Because of social media.
yeah, yes, it's like 7 seconds or 9 seconds. So we have headwinds, so we
Yeah.
may have to make sure that our education system reimagines how we build skills of staying still,
Hmm.
observing, forming judgments, and ensuring that you proof test or that judgment against the reality. And
Yeah.
I think those skills are going to be very critical, be it AI or be it any solution in the future. When you drive efficiency, you cannot take human out of that process. In fact, you need to ensure that the humans keep pace with that evolution.
I think the other thing that folks also don't factor in, which kind of I've been thinking about a lot, is like when you look at manufacturing, we're not just talking about AI, we're also talking about robotics too.
Mhm.
Right. And if you look at like in China and in all these other countries where they have like lights out factories, we're not just talking about AI, we're also talking about robotics, which means that I believe in that kind of like domain education and how and I actually think the learning space, I feel the way that we talk about learning is so old school.
Mhm.
Actually, what we need to do is make sure that people understand like what the impacts will be to our jobs, what jobs will still be important, what do I need to be able to know and learn to be able to complete that work. And like that's where like, your first phase of like reskilling and pivoting education comes. But there's this one thing that I'm like most obsessed with right now, and we've shipped it into the product. And I'll show you it the next time we catch up. So if you imagine that I go and I reinvent, so I've told you all of your work, I give you a GPS that says where to go. Most people stop at that from a product perspective and go, oh, that's great. That's just insight. That just tells you where to go. Then, as you know, we take the workflow, we break it down into all of the subtasks, and we capture the last mile of context. So the handoffs, like all the critical stuff. And we recommend whether you're using Copilot or whatever your agent of choice is, we're then recommending like what agents, all of that going really good. Where I see this big drop and like a cliff is most customers that I've seen, and the narrative that's come from everyone was like everyone has to do prompt training. And everyone's view is that that now means that they've got AI literacy and suddenly they're going to be able to do that. The problem is that whenever you roll out this new way of working, and I talk about this example, which I seen, which was we redesign the invoice and how we pay the invoice. We've got 100 people that do this. They've only been given prompt training And suddenly we're expecting people to actually know how to pay the invoice in a new way. And they all fall off a cliff. And by the way, it's not the employee's fault. It's because no one has actually shown the employee actually how to be successful and how to pay the invoice in the new way. So what's really interesting is there's this like, and I hate the whole like in the flow of work, like in the flow learning. It's actually like just on time learning. It's the ability for you to give folks the skilling to teach them how to complete the thing ahead of them. And when you can like rapidly like teach people that fast, you're kind of like it's more like ambient, constant, like in practical use of completion of task and showing them how. That's where I think there is big change coming because as you know, when you bring in an agent, you take away tasks, but you're
Mhm.
introducing new tasks that you haven't done before, which means you need to be able to teach. So like that's, and we talk about this like stealth management thing, we've been talking about stealth change management and that whole, how do we do that? That's kind of where I think, I don't know whether you call it learning, but it's definitely enablement for the
Yeah.
employee to be able to work in a new way.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think it's gone beyond learning. It's enablement. But in the past, like your example of automation and robotics, in the past, automation or robotics has automated tasks that were clearly boundaries were drawn. When someone saw a robotic arm, they could tell that, well, this is to take care of the complex roles, and so that I am safe as a human. But with the redesign and redeployment of workflows, it's not just about automation of task anymore. It's about automation of work in a way
Mhm.
that there is a triage of not only automation for a certain purpose, but also discernment and judgment to a certain extent. And I think the line has to be drawn ahead of this redesign as to how do we reimagine the work and where are humans going to lead, where are humans going to rely on AI, where it's possible for AI to do tasks better, but humans are still supervising it, and where is it that we'll have humans and AI co-create things. If
Mhm.
that's clarified and we bring our people along, and as I said earlier, it's judgment comes from experience, and many organizations are not investing in that experience, and probably this is why early career talent is not um, uh, the graduation ceremonies example
Mhm.
that you gave.
All the
they
booze.
they
Yeah.
they they're seeking real life experiences, and it's actually a positive sign that they're actually seeking to be belong to a workforce that actually welcomes them versus says that even before you join, we're going to teach you prompt. And by the way, why we're teaching you prompt is because we just want you to do mechanical work without thinking about why you're doing what you're doing. So it goes back to a full circle on our role is going to be very important for us to be able to enable people to understand the purpose of why we are redesigning the work, towards what end, and what role do they play, and do they have the skills to play that role, and how are we going to invest in their development so they build the skills so that in a world that has AI enablement, humans become more autonomous to do things that they really should be doing.
Hmm. I do think there's going to be I can feel the feeling of like a political shift in the market where the AI frontier firms are pulling back a little bit from their aggressive language of like everyone's jobs going. Like you see Sam Altman and the Anthropic folks, like their whole narrative was everyone won't have a job. And now they're getting ready for IPO. They're now pulling back a little bit on that. And they're basically like, oh, we kind of were a bit like too dramatic. And I think that's because they're realizing that, most people are stepping back and they're getting the booze. And I think they've been too, um, I don't know, in their bid to like sell a tool, they're actually cannibalizing their ability to even sell more because they're terrifying people. And if
Mhm.
people don't adopt their tools, like you can buy a tool, as you know, and if no one adopts it, that becomes shelfware and eventually churns,
Yeah.
right? At what point does a company continue to pay hundreds of millions of dollars for AI without seeing the ROI of the AI itself? And look at the amount of like kind of terrifying articles right now where like you see the stories of like CFOs now saying that they're spending more money on tokens than the people they let go in the first place.
Yeah.
I mean, if all of that isn't like a really clear message to leaders to kind of like regroup, because what I seen sort of happening, sort of one in market, there's like the shift now where they're starting to be more positive. And I think it's because one, they're IPOing, but two, they're realizing that the CEOs of these companies are going to be held to account. And by the way, if you're redesigning work in a complicated organization, remember your humans are still going to be needed in the loop of work. Therefore, if they don't adopt it and they kick back at you, you are going to go backwards in productivity and you will not make money because you need those people. So I think there's this like recognition right now that hold on a second, we need to tone it down a minute. And then I think the other part that's really interesting, Santosh, as well, is like if we are buying AI and we're spending more on the tokens than the people that we had in the first place, doesn't this whole thing kind of defeat the whole point of what everyone was, you know what I'm saying? Like it's kind of like that's a big thing. And then the third thing, I think there's a leadership thing right now where CEOs and leaders have went out and said, everyone build these like token boards where you get a leadership of who's spending the most tokens. Like that is just nonsense. You're driving people to go and build technology with no outcome, no goal, no clear like requirement of why it needs to the business, and it's costing you so much money. So it doesn't like make any sense. So I think this is why the employees are getting like the shits, to be honest, because they're actually like seeing all of this play out in front of them.
Yeah, and I think if you think about larger organizations, there seems to be a bias in some, and I'm speaking on from my observation and my personal capacity, is short-term gains or flash in the pan approach versus what do organizations really stand for. And humans in the future, if they are not developed in a certain way, they cannot, even confirm the abnormalities, as I mentioned in the first place. So there is, while short term, it might seem like a large capacity unlock and an efficiency gain, towards what end is unclear. And in the future, I want to draw a parallel to organizations having business continuity plans
Hmm.
or emergency response plan. Well, what happens if electricity shuts down? What if there's a natural calamity? I think we may need to have a similar approach
Hmm.
when organizations trying to do a mock drill to say, imagine a world 5 years from now going at the pace that we are going, without, if we don't have structured thinking on how we redesign work and bringing humans along with us. Imagine your workforce then, and then try to do a business continuity plan.
Yeah,
If AI shuts down,
that's a really good idea,
yeah,
actually.
how many humans would have the ability to discern and problem solve,
Yeah.
and therefore it's better positioned to bring them along and ensure that the fundamental skills of uh, discernments and process discipline
Yeah.
is understood deeply. And AI helps us, but I've heard that there are certain organizations that are doing like a Friday where let's test out without AI and see what happens. But I don't
Hmm.
think it's that kind of a test. It needs to be a continuous cycle where it's an integral part of what you called enablement,
Yeah.
or giving people experiences, rotating them across multiple functions faster, so they have the judgment skills developed sooner to see the upstream and downstream impact of their processes to their clients or stakeholders.
You've just freaked me out a little bit because I'm thinking, because I'm the chairman of my board, and I'm like, maybe I should be thinking about this for my company. Because, like, I'm building $1 billion company with 100 people right now, and we're halfway there. And the way that we're able to work is because we're so AI amplified. But I've never even thought about the world where what if it didn't exist and the risk register, like every board needs to have a risk register, right?
Exactly.
And that is like a true risk. So thank you. You're good now giving me nightmares. It's like
Or
you
probably a
can
ray of
tell
hope.
you look after the legal department as well in your company.
Yes. So thank you for that. I think it helps. I've been thinking about the what if.
Damn.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, this is great. So if we think about we're all kind of like clear on the unknowns of what AI is going to do. I think the thing that you have done really well is you've been through so many different types of transformations in other organizations where you've like built real physical products, not just software. You've been redesigning work itself, even pre-AI. One of the things I want everyone to get out of this is the steps that folks need to take. Like most people haven't got to the point that you've got to, right? So I think like imagine you were starting from scratch and we call you up and we're like, okay, how do I do it? What is the most important steps that I need to go through to actually do it? Talk us through a little bit of that.
Yeah, I lean on my past experience in Six Sigma, right? I've been thinking about it as I was beginning to think about having this conversation with you. Is if you think of any process improvements has been around for a long time, especially in large manufacturing industrial companies. Any process, including transactional processes, can be simplified or improved. But the difference was you define, there's a business case, you define the problem. What the sponsor defines the problem by saying, here's a real problem that we have. Our, as an example, our sales has remained flat, irrespective of our revenues going up. There seems to be some underlying issue which I'm not sure of what it is. Let's put a team together, 6 months project. In Six Sigma they would call it a define, measure, analyze, improve, and control process, DMAC. So you define the problem, put a team together, they go out and measure and understand if and validate if the problem is real, and then they analyze with root cause analysis, and then they address the root cause with improvements. Now
Hmm.
here's where the improvements can be manifolds. Improvements can be you're re organizing the process, simplifying the process using tools which can be digital solutions or now AI. And then the key part was control. Once you establish the process, you need to put it in a governing structure. You have governance where a process owner monitors the process after the team hands that process over to them and ensures that the process doesn't reverse back to the old ways, or because humans have a tendency to practice work a certain way, but also continues to take ownership of continuous improvement.
Yeah.
So, why I share this framework is I think it's relevant in work redesign now even more than before, because what we are talking about is a team of people coming together, bringing their experiences from the process to solve issues, versus now for organizations like ours, we are thinking the same as I explained. Think about the work first, think about the issue, think
Yeah.
about why. And I think this framework would be an important one for people to remember. The improvement is, or the augmentation is a tool, but the solution is actually a brainchild of a collective collaborative team. And I think we need to form probably smaller teams like that, build trust, understand the end game, and and then probably use AI as an augmented tool that enables people.
Yeah. The thing, so you're in our what we would describe as Pioneers Club, which is like
Mhm.
our early customers, and you got it when I met you, it was in Gartner, right? Like it was in Orlando, I think, when we met you.
Mhm.
And we were like so early in the task conversation, like task, subtask for me was like my background is workforce optimization, right? So I don't have an engineering background, but I think about squeezing and like I think about work as a programmable sense and that you can like break it up and reprogram. And what was really interesting was you instantly got task subtask as the critical core unit of work for any reinvention that was like critical for you. So talk a little bit about sort of what you've learned, like the stuff that we've been doing around tasks, like quality of tasks, like so that folks understand that before they run towards reinvention, they have to have like a visibility of the work that's actually happening in the company, right?
Yeah. I want to tell everyone that, the one thing that stuck with me when I met you first time is when you mentioned not only work ontology, you said tasks, subtasks, and you said work has tasks, people have skills.
Hmm.
And I think that connection is very important to make. There are many solutions out there where people have talked about skills based career, but without a connection to the work.
Hmm.
And I think this connection was very important. And I was glad that your organization was making that connection. And the way we've gone about it is we are working on defining our work, and we're doing it very diligently with our leadership team, with meaning the people who are actually the practitioners of work. We are doing a pilot run with a couple of functions. But when we have a task, subtask level decisions made and tasks validated, as Reejig came as a partner to us in helping us through the process in some of the functions, we have seen the work output aligned 90% of the time to what people actually did. And and so it was a journey, but it was a change journey for us as well. And I think our change management is effective when we bring our leaders along and they validate that this is the effort that it takes to do this task, and this is really what our associates do. And that's the first step. Our future vision is that we also have a language of skills that's coming out of this. And how do we enable this task subtask language into a job profile and activate career for our employees to enable them to understand that today this is the human skills they have, these are the technical skills they have, and where are we going. So we're working on adding a strategic workforce planning element, where we define our 5 year outline. We define our 5 year vision for where we want to go, and then this input plus the delta would tell us where do we need to augment, where do we need to upskill and reskill our employees, and that's our first priority
Yeah.
at this time.
I think for folks as well, just listening, I'm going to like click in a little bit to what Santosh is saying because like task is really important. Subtask is the most important. And the
Mhm.
reason that subtask, like if you wanted to go and get tasks of a job description, just go put it into ChatGPT or Claude and you can get that. And that's like, and you get an AI percentage on that based on who knows whatever model it's pumping out. But if you truly want to understand the work that happens in your company and understand like how work flows within your company, there's kind of like three different levels. There is the task, there is the subtask, and then there is like the handoffs, the connection points. The way I describe it is like work context. That's the third level when you really get to reinvention. So if you're only sitting at a high level task, that's just insight. It doesn't enable you to take action. So you went through task, subtask, and that give you action. Now you're in like actual, or that give you intelligence. Sorry. Now you're moving into like actual action and reinvention, which is where you kind of like break it down, re-engineer it, think about where AI comes in, what tasks are being removed, what tasks are being added in. So that's kind of like the phase one of getting to there. The other thing I would say that we have noticed to become really critical, and Santosh, you and I will see this play out the deeper we get into reinvention.
Mhm.
If you go to the business and you give them task data without the subtask data, they just dismiss it as a HR project. And the reason that they will dismiss it is because the business has to see themselves in this work. And if they don't believe, the thing that you were really strict with us on is like you want to validate all of this with the business, because if they don't believe it and see themselves in that work, they will never take any of that intelligence or feedback or strategy off you if the critical foundation isn't right and that they haven't like bought into that. And I think that was kind of where you were really early in that like journey of like critical step is build an
Mhm.
infrastructure and an architecture that the business like has that foundation, and then everything will come after we have that. So I think that's where you did really well. It was painful, I think, for everybody in the sense of like you were early in that thinking, but now you have like over 90% approval rating from the business in your tasks, which is, like I don't think many other situations you can actually like put a stamp on that and say that, which means when you go into meetings, you're not trying to push a HR project. You're actually, you've co-built with the business
Mhm.
infrastructure and an architecture to wire their house. So now
Yeah.
you can start to kind of like think about how you move the furniture around. You know what I mean? Like that's the difference between, and the one lesson that I learned from my first career building, like Reejig was very focused on skill when we first started. And it always felt like I was dragging people over the hill, that it was a HR thing that the business didn't care about. And my career before was like weird because I was HR, but I wasn't. I was a workforce optimization person who sat in the business. And when I was stuck doing the skills work in our first version, it always just felt like a HR project, and that the business kind of felt like it was a vitamin versus a painkiller. Whereas
Mhm.
this is like a business problem. Like work is basically how we all make money. Like it's how your business does its thing, right? So I think that was like a big learning from Santosh and watching him like kind of the leadership here was get visibility to the work to the depth that the business believes in it and trusts it, make sure that they have a say in like co-creation of that and editing, and then have those validation results so that you have, it's kind of like when you get your ISO certification, like we now have this percentage of like review and validation, which means that like you're never selling that to the business. That's the business is saying that's our data. Like, so I think that was a really big
Yeah.
lesson.
Yeah, and I've had the fortune of having good peers, right? They're very collaborative, and once you have the proof point, and we co-create a solution, the one thing I'll add, Shivan, is that we have to make sure to reimagine work because we're doing by function.
Hmm.
It's not task and subtask level automation. So we are pausing to think about, not just workflow optimization, but because each of the functions work with each other.
Yeah.
And so we want to do this exercise for all other functions. We're doing it for other functions this year and beyond, and then see how work gets done orchestrated across the organization. And I think that's where we will probably do a deeper dive in working with
Hmm.
the business to understand that how can we reimagine the work rather than automate tasks in our current state processes, because we have
Yeah.
an opportunity and insight now to redefine, drive efficiency, unlock capacity to invest in our human capital, and reskill them for a brighter future. So I think
Yeah.
what we are focused on. So this year it'll be more about taking the language for those functions that have completed the work and activate career pathways. So
Hmm.
that's our primary work. That it's a foundational aspect of HR's work design and activating people's career.
Hmm. It's really interesting because I just signed off on our next quarter product drop. So exactly what you just said. So right now we take the work, we reinvent the workflow, we go to subtask, we match the agent, we give them the agent blueprints to go and build, we track the changes. What we're seeing is customers now are getting more adventurous. So they don't just want to do that level, they want to look at horizontal, so processes
Mhm.
and work streams. So like
Yes.
let's say onboarding or I think things that sit across multiple streams of the business. Then you've got your like vertical, which is your like task workflow that sits within like paying an invoice. It sits within a division
Mhm.
and it's kind of boxed off.
Mhm.
That's kind of playing out. And then the third thing I'm seeing is now customers are going, okay, in both of those scenarios, give me a version that can show me what I'm allowed to do with the agents that I've got, with the compliance and everything that we know about your company. And then they want a completely rejigged version. What, like, think about like day zero, if you were to completely sketch up how work runs. So we've now got that releasing in our next product drop, which I'll send to you after like the figmas of it. But you'll see this is where it's coming, and that comes from a level of maturity in the customer
Yeah.
base where
Mhm.
people are starting to now get a little bit of game tape, and they're like, okay, rather than just subtask level, let me take out the whole thing and think
Yes.
about redesign. And that goes back to your point about the Six Sigma, like how you think about that whole process.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not workflow by verticals, but as you mentioned, the entire value chain. It used to be called in manufacturing value stream mapping.
Yeah,
You used to map value streams and say where are the delays, where are the bottlenecks,
yeah,
and if this is exactly that. It just so happens that the tool that we might end up using is an AI tool,
yeah.
but it's a value stream mapping at scale. But for a large complex organization, this has to be done across all functions to realize the benefit.
I'm thinking of calling it work streams only
Mhm.
because processes feel so like 1980s
Yeah.
and RPA. So I'm thinking like I think work streams and then workflows
Yeah.
are kind of like how I'm
Yeah.
structuring it. But like, yeah, keen to see what you think when I release it out to you. I think
Yeah.
one of the other things that you're by far standout passionate about is like I'm doing that, but I also want the governance and the trigger of the data. So back to the point, folks. So you go and you reinvent work stream or workflow. You take away tasks, you remove work, you introduce new work that you haven't done before. So you see all that work that Santosh was doing at the start, where he built the wiring of the company and built the architecture. That's going to be constantly changing. So there's the governance layer now where you kind of do both things on the one data framework, which means that as he's going out and he's reinventing his work, that it triggers back to the architecture that says, oh, by the way, we've now impacted 30% of these software engineer roles or sales roles, which means that you now have the information to act on preventing any impact to that individual role. So the way you're structuring it is like, okay, I've done this whole like reimagine. Talk me a little bit now about, okay, we go out and reinvent. Talk to me about then like how you're thinking about how that links to career and what you're going to do in terms of like the design for the sort of being responsible, looking after your folks.
Yeah, and this is not new to us. When we call it power shift, meaning we always have believed that our associates need need to be developing towards the future of where we are going, and we are a large tier one supplier, so we have to take cues from our customers. So as the industry evolves, uh, you know vehicles are becoming more software defined vehicles in the future, so capabilities also evolve. So we look at our inventory mapping of our skills. We look at, starting with engineering as an example. We then invest in our people's growth, and there is a individual development plan that we put in place. And with this information that we're getting from our work architecture, this augments that and makes it more real, because now we know this are the skills expected. And if we are able to extrapolate and reimagine in our workforce plan that what would the future of work look like, then that enables us to be more proactive and
Mm,
and share that with our employees and make sure that they understand the why behind why they're being developed. And I think that piece is very important to build trust. As I said before, this is not a technology curve, this is a trust curve.
yeah.
And once you establish the trust and you know where we are going with absolute clarity towards our future purpose and vision, and we also want to make sure that our employees understand that as to the investments we make in them are pertinent to the future.
Mm. Do you think that like, and I don't know the answer to this, and I don't know what to do. Do you think because I've got all the task data and I can tell you the impact to the task and I can tell you like what to do next, do you think I should expose that task data to the employee? Like, do you think there's a world, or would that freak everybody out? Like what do you think is the best thought? What do you think I should do?
Yeah, I think it depends on if employees have been brought to in the problem solving journey or not.
Mm,
So if the work has been defined or the business case has been defined to say we would like to redefine the work for this purpose, which is uh, enabling humans for a stronger future, and when the trust is built, yes, I think then employees should know the
mm,
insights so that they can make even better, stronger decisions and actually contribute. Everybody brings a fresh perspective and contribute to newer ideas.
yeah. Yeah. Because I like the thing that I kind of struggle with, like just morally, or I don't know, like I don't want to be building a company that's gonna be taking people out of jobs, right? Like that's not like I absolutely want to be bold and responsible at the same time. And I always think about like what's my role to play. And I sit on, as you know, the biggest, largest source of data in the world, specifically in this for each industry. So it's like, do I make that publicly available for folks so that they can come and like see themselves, or does the company do that? Like what? Whose responsibility is it? You know, like, is it like that's the part where I'm kind of trying to figure out how,
Yeah.
like, what's my role? What's the company's role? Like, is it the company's role when they impact people to make sure that they're being reskilled, or is it the employee's role? Like, I think it's actually a dual role, is my personal opinion.
I think initially, because every company has its own uh, drive and intention. So probably if for organizations that are more responsible, um, it's a organization's role because they have a methodical approach to how to bring employees along.
Mm,
And so I think starting with it should be an organization's role to define the purpose is the right way to start it. And I would like to say, bold and responsible is a good phrase. Bold in solving issues and problems that hinder associates or employees to bring their full potential,
mm,
and being responsible in bringing them along the change
yeah,
journey is what I would like to expand, so that people know bold doesn't mean optimization bold.
yeah.
Bold means that optimization to a cause which takes away from our humans to realize their full potential.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's really important. And given you've done like, your career has been transformations, large scale, like what are the things when you look around the market or your peer group or other companies that you think folks are just not understanding or they're getting wrong? Like what are the things like the watch outs for people?
I think one, and I'm just sharing it based on I think many of my peers and many are doing what's right for their organization, but I feel the what the risk I see or the concern is treating this as a tool purchase as a budgetary item versus a cultural change
Hmm.
is the largest risk. Again, prioritizing short term uh, for the long term
I agree.
is a risk. I feel if they clarify the long term purpose and probably pressure test with the business continuity plan that we talked about, probably they would have a better clarity on why they want to implement what they want to implement. Of course, there's efficiency to be gained, but towards what end?
Yeah.
And I think defining that might take a longer time within the organization. But for us, it was easier because our purpose was very clear and alignment was there from that point of view. It was more about how do we get there. So I think that's something that people should watch out for. That it's a how you build trust is by being authentic about why you want to deploy such a solution.
Yeah. And it's so true what you're saying. Like if you look at everybody, I don't know, it's kind of crazy because in the market you've got this like I think there's this like boardroom conversation that's happening right now where everyone's looking at these examples which aren't really true and that's setting the expectation that they need to be going faster and it's aggressive. But I think like people are treating this like it's like a short-term tool project
Hmm.
and versus like a long-term destination. And like I think even if you look at companies that are like standing up these multi-million dollar transformation programs where they're going after like certain things, that's a bridge, it's not a destination, right? Like it's and I think the thing that I think that you have learned and I have learned and like customers we're starting to see are seeing the same thing. This is a destination and you need to have the capability in your business to build this forever. It's not a one-time thing and it's not a tool purchase.
Exactly.
It's an evolution of how you work, and it's going to keep happening forever. So you need to have leaders like you on board who are thinking about the bigger picture of the destination and wiring up the company on that journey. Because I look at all of these programs that are happening right now, and I'm like, you can tell that most of these are going to fail. You can just tell. Like I can sit around the side of a project now, and I'm like, that's not going to work because there's so many things that tell me like what did you call that word where you just can feel it like like I'm going into these companies like like I can see that that's gonna break, that's gonna break, that's gonna break.
Exactly.
um but I
Yeah.
think I think your point is like true. It's the true bigger picture. It's a cultural shift, it's a completely new muscle for the
Mm.
company. And the one thing that I'm kind of obsessed with right now, so when you're like on your phone, you get like the iPhone upgrade, right? Like and like I when you get an upgrade and you just know that like things are changing in your phone, like I believe it'll get to the point in our companies where it becomes like an Apple iPhone upgrade that work
Mm.
how you pay that invoice will change every 6 months or maybe sooner because the tool gets stronger. So it's how do you build the culture also in your business that they're accepting that and that they are able to like adjust to the constant evolution of work. I think that's a really important like stealth change management component that we've talked about. Because I think that culture, the enablement, the stealth change management, the treating your people with like transparency and
Mm.
like whether you're telling them that they're impact the part that you made that I keep thinking about just in my head while we're going through this is like your point is that the company is responsible at this point of like knowing the impact. You are right because the company does know where they're going.
Mhm.
They know where they're going. They now have the data that can tell them if they do that, then this. Therefore, that means that they're going to know the impact back into their workforce. So I think like your point on that is really strong as well.
Yeah, and that comes with the responsibility as a partner, right? For you to make sure that you let organizations decide it, and over a period of time, when it becomes a way of doing work architecture and redesign in a few years, probably that's when everybody thinks it's logical and everybody should have access to what they do, but everybody's purpose and intentions are very different at this point of time. And I want to reiterate that it's more about how do we prepare. The largest risk is for most organizations to think about is how you prepare the future generation
Mhm.
for the judgment and discernment.
Yeah, I love
If
that.
you don't have that built into your work architecture, and if you don't have that built into your workforce plan, and I think that's a continuous flow of talent and pipeline and enabling them by building the core human skills. And that comes only when you are on the floor, or you're walking, or you're processing something. Maybe a clue is that we may have to do that at a higher pace and scale that resonates with the expectations of the early career generation.
I love this. I mean, already I could package this up to be a book to teach everybody. But the core things that I think that I'm taking away from this, and I hope folks are taking away from, one, build your architecture. So start first with building your architecture, understand your work down to task, subtask level. Two, bring your business on the journey of them making them feel like it's their data so they get to like rubber stamp it and make sure that they feel that trust that data, and that's the critical infrastructure for both reinvention of work and also reinvention of career,
Yes.
because that same data set has to feed those two motions. Think about work streams, which is like long processes and redesigning that, as well as like workflows, which are like isolated in a vertical manner into your areas of work. Looking after your people. So understanding, if I do this, what will be the impact on my people, and have an open culture where we talk about it in our companies
Mhm.
around like we are putting in plans to make sure that we're not leaving you behind, which I love. And then go walk your factory, get in amongst it, keep feeling it out, and making sure that there's that judgment built into your culture so that folks like know that there's like actual like ability to see if this is nonsense or not, like, and actually be able to pick up that. And finally, Siobhan needs to go and do a risk assessment of how I'm building my company to make sure that like I think about that worst case scenario. Santosh, this was awesome. Like, thank you for one, your leadership in the space. I love getting to work with you. I love getting to jam with you on our product. You've been really early on the pioneering journey with us. Everyone, you can find Santosh online on LinkedIn. You can follow him and see what he's up to. Hopefully, we get to have more of these conversations. For folks as well, like we have, given there's so much learning that's coming in this space, I've built this kind of like out of the box course just so folks can actually start learning. So you can find it here. We can also send it to you after this as well. Santosh, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Take care, folks.
Thank you, Siobhan.